Hi everyone, welcome to this kind of informal chat about great stuff that's happening in internal comms. My name's Dan Sodergren. Some of you might know me, and if not, then I do talks about technology, the future of work, and AI. And I kind of specialise now around this brilliant world of internal comms. So a huge shout out and thanks to people who have introduced me to my guest. I know the internal comms world is wonderfully small. And so it's brilliant to have Wayne Asplan here. And he's going to talk about his research that he's done around this whole concept of 2030 and what internal comms is going to look like with artificial intelligence. I've read it. I absolutely love it. Basically, I created this whole idea just so I could talk to Wayne, if I'm completely honest with you. So I'm going to hand over to him. He's going to do a quick intro, and then we're going to launch straight into it. We're going to be doing it for, I don't know, about 30 minutes. It's pretty high impact stuff. I'm really excited to go for it. So Wayne, over to you.
And hi everyone, and thanks for having me on the call, Dan. So yeah, Wayne Asplan's my name. It's 8 o'clock here in Geelong in Australia, which is where I am, 8 o'clock on Friday night. And I've been in comms now for about 20 years. I came out of actually a couple of big web design firms during the dot-com boom. So I've always had this interest in technology, and I've done quite a lot of work with technology. And I got involved in AI quite a few years ago when I wrote my first paper about it. And then I trained a lot of people in Copilot last year. So yeah, I've got a real sort of interest in this area. If you want to find me on LinkedIn, I actually created my LinkedIn page in a sort of moment of madness. So if you look up Waniac, that's the URL of my LinkedIn page.
I love that, Waniac. I absolutely love that. I did a bit. If I was, I think it's been like my first Hotmail name. I'm not going to tell you what it was, but it certainly was not overly professional. It wasn't rude in any way, but it wasn't overly professional. Thank goodness we stopped out of all those things. So yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why I love what you're doing and everything about certainly the research as well, but also because I know you've been around the AI world, like longer than I have, I think. I mean, I've been doing digital marketing stuff for 20 years, and okay, I've been doing future of work stuff for maybe 15 and digital transformation. But my interest really started around AI around 10 years ago. Actually, my original interest is much longer because I happen to know a few of the people that are really now high up in that world, but that's just by luck. But actually, intellectually, I started getting interested a bit ago. So my first question to you, Wayne, is kind of that whole kind of inspiration moment, right? Like, what inspired you to first start researching this AI impact and communication? Because that was in 2017, right, that you started doing this. So
that's right.
That's so long ago. So my first question is, what inspired you, but also have your predictions come true? So it's a double header.
Yeah, sure. So it sounds like you might have been involved in AI longer than me. Around 2017, there was some early conversations from various organisations. Probably the most notable was McKinsey about the emergence of AI. And McKinsey at the time did some really good research on the impact on jobs. The World Economic Forum was doing research on it, various other organisations. And I picked up on this, and I thought, this is very interesting from a comms point of view and what it might mean. In actual fact, a lot of the early examples that were popping up in that time were related to comms. So Associated Press was using natural language generation to write sporting reports and things like that.
Yeah,
there were AI tools to simulate target audiences and just to create job ads. So there was a lot going on that was relevant to comms. Now, I wasn't alone in this, I should say. There were quite a few, actually, comms colleagues in UK, US, and Australia who were also looking at it. There was a little kind of group of us, and we were quite interested in it. Now, in terms of the findings, funnily enough, we got a lot of it right. There were some big things we got wrong, but a lot of the research I did sort of was pretty spot on. Nice. I'll give you an example. There was a guy called Hugh Bradlow who was the chief scientist at Telstra, which is our big telco in Australia, and he's a self-confessed geek. And he was asked in an interview, what do you think will be the most important skill in the future with all of this AI and that coming? And you'd think he'd say STEM or something like that, or coding, but he actually said empathy. That was his answer, and that's exactly what we're sort of looking at today. I know one thing I did in the paper as well. I spent a couple of pages in the paper talking about this thing I imagined called Harvey, and Harvey was like this super clever assistant who would help you basically do everything. And we'd all have one of them. It'd be really cool. And what I didn't realise, in fact, I only sort of realised relatively recently, what I was discussing was agentic AI.
Yeah,
It's exactly what it was, and so it was a good, a sort of good prediction there. But there were a number of things that we got wrong. I mean, a lot of the predictions around jobs were more about saying things like predictable physical work would be the first thing that would be hit, and the sort of more creative work, knowledge work, would be much further down the track. Now, clearly, that didn't play out. I mean, when this did finally hit, we're first cab off the rank, basically. But initially they were talking about sort of this predictable physical work, data processing, data collection. They'd be the first areas that AI would really take in. If I can share a really funny story, there was a guy I found called Etherable on a Slack discussion board, and he put up this post and he said, "How do I, or should I tell my boss that I've automated my job?" And he was a programmer, but he was in this job where he was just checking data in Excel spreadsheets. So what he did was that he actually created a program to do it, and he cut down his work time from a week, like a full week, to 2 hours a week was what he needed to do the work. But what was fascinating about it was that he realized over time that he had to inbuild errors into what he'd created, because if he didn't, somebody would cotton onto the fact that there's no mistakes.
It was almost too good for its own good. The machine was too good at it.
That's right. So it was initially all about data and predictable physical work. The other thing I think that was amiss in the paper was probably more focus on risk. Would have been useful. And the other thing was, I think I felt this would start to hit earlier than it actually did. In fact, I was wondering if it was ever going to hit for a while there, and then suddenly, bang!
Yeah, it did the opposite, right?
Exactly. GPTs are up and away, and it's been madness ever since.
Well, is that one of those funny sayings, isn't it? And I'm probably going to get this wrong, but isn't it? All of a sudden, nothing happens for 10 years, and then all of a sudden, in a year, 10 years of things happen.
That's exactly
it. Slowly, and then all at once, right? And that's exactly what's happening in AI, as you rightly say. And I was in a similar kind of boat, because I was talking about digital transformation pieces with companies for a very long time, not just around internal comms. In fact, really around the whole business, really more than internal comms. And it's fascinating to see how we kind of knew that the GPT was coming. But obviously, what then Sam did to release 3.5, because it changes the UX and the way that people did it, and it became the fastest technology that's ever been known on the planet. It suddenly became much, much better. And I'm not going to go too geeky into the reasons why that is, but I love the fact that, just like the tsunami that kind of came over, and the amount of data and information we now have, and the abilities of AI, and how quickly, how amazing it's got in the last 2 years. It's now stunning compared to where it was. And I think that kind of links into what you're saying about actually we need to have more empathy and more emotional intelligence. In one of my books, I talk about the fifth industrial revolution. I truly believe that's where we are. And the intelligences you need, there's 4 of them, but artificial intelligence is just one. And the other one's emotional intelligence. So I love the fact you talk about emotional intelligence and empathy. So, but also in your great research, you talk about these 4 C's, right, which are very human around kind of internal communications, and almost bigger. So that's my next question to you. Like, how are organizations dealing with these 4 C's, and what strategies do they use? I'll let you explain the 4 C's. I'm not going to steal it and make out that I was a genius and I made it up. So I'll go to you, Wayne. You tell us the 4 C's, and then if you could give us some examples of how that's worked in organizations.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I do want to say, I'll go through, for people who haven't read it, I'll go through a bit about the paper. And the first thing I do want to say is that it's not my intention to have this paper sort of seen as the kind of definitive view of what's going to happen in the world. That would be mad to try and predict that. What it is really is to sort of start a conversation. And in that respect, I'm really keen to hear what other people have to say about this, whether they agree with me or not. I mean, you might vehemently disagree with me on some things. I'd love to hear it if you do. I think we are going to share a survey afterwards, and I'd love for people to fill it in, or if you want to put anything in the chat, I'd love to see it. Basically, if I go through in short what the findings of the paper were, it's this. So over the next few years, we're going to see a very significant amount of change being driven by AI, of course, and not just AI, other technologies as well. We're also going to see significant change in sort of regulatory fields, in the needs and demands of customers and employees as well. There will be significant change, and the change we've been feeling is accelerating, and that raises for me, just as a side point here, an interesting or an important point, because there have been two reports just recently talking about change fatigue, and both in comms but in broader business as well. And if we've got change fatigue now, the change is only going to accelerate. And how are we going to cope with that? So what I came up with in this research is that there are these areas that the companies will improve at over time, and they'll get more dynamic, much faster at making decisions, much better able to predict things. They'll be more collaborative. We'll start to see actually technologies where companies can collaborate, can have separate data sets that they can bring together in a kind of secure way, and collaborate over their own data. Human centricity is obviously an incredibly important one, and the companies that focus most on humans are going to be the ones who will succeed in this. But the other thing is risk ready, and that's this idea, because the risks are going to be higher. It's this idea that we are much better at predicting risks and other challenges, and that when they do occur, we're better at responding. So what that then came to was these two areas that would impact comms. The first one is in the potential kind of augmentation and democratization of some of the work we do today. So this is things like creating content. Will be they are already being augmented, and what will happen over time is they'll start to get democratized across the business. So that's a threat, of course, to what we do, but it's countered by this huge opportunity, which is there'll be an increasing demand for companies to actually have comms support, but at a more of a leadership level. So the first thing is to have comms people really helping to drive this sort of AI-enabled culture. And this is where the 4 Cs come from. I'll come back to that in a minute. So this is us doing AI skills and training, priorities and use cases, change, crisis, helping people manage these things. And of course, communication skills will be increasingly important as well. And the other side of this is a growing need for us to deliver more informed counsel to the executive team. And this hits in areas like culture and alignment, in helping them communicate and work with their own personal AI agents. Again, risk and crisis management. So there's a number of different areas. So the 4 Cs you mentioned, this is this culture that I was talking about. And what the 4 Cs are basically is confidence. And that's being confident in the technology and confident in what you're doing. It's curiosity, a need to continually learn, because that's such an important part of this. Collaboration and caring. And caring, it sounds a little bit like, we're all around the campfire holding hands. It's not that. It's that people need to really care about the outputs they create and the things that they do. And if they don't, there are significant risks in place. Now, of those four, you sort of asked which is the one that's the biggest challenge. I actually think it's collaboration.
Oh,
And
okay.
I think this has always been an issue for companies,
Okay.
is driving collaboration, particularly across teams and across different organizations. Collaboration can work pretty well within teams, but across teams it can be difficult. Zora Artis and I have done a fair bit of research on strategic alignment over the years. And this is, I think, personally, one of the core drivers or one of the most powerful ways you can actually improve collaboration is building that really shared understanding of, what are we all about as a company? What are we delivering? What's our strategy? And what's my role in doing that? And what's my colleague's role in doing that? And that starts to help people come together and make sure that everyone's working in the right direction. I often think of misalignment in companies as being like a whole lot of people in a whitewater raft all paddling in different directions. You never go anywhere.
Yeah,
And if you
absolutely.
ever get into the whitewater, you're in real trouble. So I think that's the really sort of key thing, is to sort of really strengthen that alignment in organizations and drive greater collaboration. Interestingly, this collaboration needs to operate not just with different people, but we also need to think about human AI collaboration.
Absolutely.
People
Absolutely.
working with AI, teams working with AI. There
Mhm.
was actually, I don't know if you saw it, Dan, but there was some research that came out just this week, I think it was, from Forrester,
Mhm.
saying that individuals and teams using AI, it dramatically increases the quality of their solutions over people and
Yeah,
teams that don't.
I'll tell you exactly how much. 37% is the answer to the to that white paper that came out. So when you use AI as well, it's something like your productivity and efficiency increases by about 37%. So yeah, not only I read it with immense amount of glee and enjoyment, and also it's backed up with the things that the guy from the CEO of Salesforce said as well. I mean, he came out very kind of bullishly on this and said, we are the last generation that will only be managing humans, because he knows that his managers will be managing AI and human beings. And I was talking to a client about this yesterday, when we get to this next world of AI agents, which I think a little bit maybe in a year's time. But right now, we've all got to start thinking as leaders, how do we manage AI and AI's relationship with our workers, right? And that's why you're talking about, I love the fact you talked about collaboration a lot, because yeah, that is one of the biggest ones, isn't it? But isn't it exciting that that's the thing that AI is really good at, because it doesn't have an ego. Like collaboration can sometimes be the fact that human beings just either don't get on, or they have different priorities, or because we're human beings, right? That's the thing. So I'd argue, the only time I'm going to ever argue against you when I have a feeling, because all the other stuff is absolutely bang on. I think it's caring that these companies sometimes find harder to do, right? We sometimes are so much about them. Certainly when I meet lots of people, not in internal comms, but actually the whole business entirely. And I think the key thing for me to take away from these 4Cs, but also your points about internal comms, is internal comms is going to naturally increase into a leadership position, right? It's going to get that seat at the table, because actually the creation of culture and people liking each other and knowing what to do and paddling in the same direction, as you so beautifully put it, that's actually going to be key to the business. It's not just going to be a nice to have, it's going to be a must have, because
Yeah.
otherwise everybody else who gets on better using AI, being more productive, are going to beat you in the race, right? So I actually think internal comms is in a hugely exciting spot, exciting and also potentially strategically powerful position, which perhaps not everybody on the call or listening to this video kind of is used to. So I think you're right. We're going to have more confidence. We're going to need more curiosity, and I think actually the more we can collaborate with our leaders, the better. I'm gonna pull you up on a couple of bits with that whole idea, because I think you also I know because I love the paper. You talk about kind of like the consciousness of the C-suite, or them being a bit. Is it? Are you talking about that? You're talking about them being nicer in the C-suite. So that's my question. Is the conscience of the C-suites, or the way that you look at it in that paper? Can you give me some examples of how leadership's kind of changed? Because I talk about it in my book about how leadership needs to change. But I think your research is showing actually maybe how leadership is changing. Is that right?
Well, it is. It's an area where, and what I was quoting in the paper was actually some. it was an IABC interview with a guy from McKinsey, and he came up with this idea of the conscience of the C-suite. And I just thought it's a tremendous way of looking at this. So it's kind of having someone in the C-suite who's saying, well, have you considered the needs of the stakeholders and what our stakeholders are saying, and to really have you thought about the ethics of some of the things that we're doing, even from a comms point of view. When I talk about ethics, we've got companies who are building guardrails around how to use AI. One of the most important things from my point of view is that as comms people, we need to make sure that those guardrails are clear. And that's our job. We should be in there doing that. I don't, in terms of like sitting there and looking at examples of people who've ascended to the C-suite from comms, I don't actually have any, to be honest. What I can say though is that I was really lucky in my early career. I got to work in my first job as a comms person with the best communications professional I've ever worked with. She was brilliant, and she was a member of the C-suite, and she was a very trusted advisor of the CEO. She really, really knew her stuff. I mean, she implemented this thing. Our customers were small businesses, and so she would go out and she would, or she instituted this thing where we would actually survey small businesses every quarter, and it would go out as a public document. But that public document would also become this huge input into the C-suite decision making, which is the sorts of things that we should be doing. Mm-hmm. One of the really interesting things that I have come up with just recently in this area is that there's some research that's come out from Deloitte that says that that C-suites are growing, and there are various new roles coming into C-suites. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the second most prominent growing role is actually chief communications officers. So this kind of entry into the C-suite, or more common entry into the C-suite, is starting to happen. And it's something that we've got to be ready for. Now, what Joe Spratt of McKinsey says is that there are three things that we need to think about as we go into the C-suite, and they're the ability for critical thinking and to be able to sort of test things that are being discussed. The second one is leading by influence and being much better at influencing decisions. And the third one is diplomacy. And I think one of the examples he uses is, come up with 100 ways of saying no. So I think it's a really important thing that we need to do. As I say, I love this idea of a conscience of the C-suite.
I love it as well. I think it's a great way of people understanding it, and also for people to kind of, isn't that going to be the role of somebody? I mean, it might not just be internal comms people, but it's going to be somebody who has to do that, right? And then there's going to be a way of then communicating that to everybody else, and I think that's a really exciting opportunity. But also to be listening, as you said, to all those different stakeholders. I suppose what I'm getting to here, Wayne, is how do you think AI is going to help people do that? Because I can see it as a kind of almost like an outsider who's specialized in AI, because it's just made for this opportunity. But with all your experience in internal comms, how do you think internal comms people are going to be able to use AI? Not necessarily with examples, but just almost theoretically to help them for the job that they want in the future.
Well, there's a number of key ways that it can help them. We all know about content creation and those sorts of things, but in being able to sort of advise, research, there's a whole range of different activities that can be used to actually better inform people. A good example I often use is you have a market out there, or you have a group of employees out there, and you might segment that market, into 5 or 6 different segments, and that's what we tend to do today. But what we're going to be able to do in time is segment those into hundreds of different personas and get really, really clear on what is needed by different people. And it's this sort of advice that we can start feeding in. This stakeholder voice becomes really, really important in all of this as we move forward.
No,
So there's a large area in that. There's also this ability to have, as I've already talked about, things like crisis planning and preparation, and they're going to be very significant C-suite discussions.
I love that. I love that. And
that we
I
need
love the fact that you're absolutely, what we're talking about here is the hyper personalization, right? Of, the
That's
super
right.
hyper personalization, and this is a bit like when I talk to internal comms people and clients in general, because it's really around marketing as well, right? And that's what I used to specialize in, is that ability to hyper personalize on an emotional level due to the data that you've got, which allows AI to then play around and do all this clever stuff. It's almost beyond what a human being could do anyway. And I think that's the bit which I'm most excited about, is let AI do the stuff which is almost physically or mentally impossible for you to do. And if you had to do it manually, it would take you far too long to do, right? And I know that I'm talking to a lot of professionals at the moment, and they are doing it manually at the moment. And I'm like, yeah, but wouldn't it be better to have an intern to do that? I like to call them automated interns, but my AIs are automated interns. Wouldn't it be better to have an automated intern that did that for you, and then you check the work rather than trying to do all that work manually? And of course, the problem you've got is that people go, yeah, but isn't that my job? Aren't I meant to be doing that? And I'm like, yeah, is that your job? When AI can take the task, should you be actually taking the strategy? Is the thing. I was just fielding a question from somebody at the same time. I was trying to multitask badly there. But thank you, Claire, for the question. We've got time, we've only got a couple of minutes, so I don't know if we're going to get to it. My last question for you is a bit of a naughty one, because it's one I really want to know the answer to too. And it brings in what we just talked about these automated interns. And that is the world of the AI agent, which I know is almost upon us, Wayne. And I know that 3 years ago, it certainly wasn't. And I know that 6 months ago, I thought it might happen in a couple of years. So they've caught me as an old tech futurist off guard with this. But AI agents are now upon us. What is this going to mean for internal communicators, especially in the future? And you talk about this brilliantly in the research, in the 2030 research that you did.
So essentially, I mean, and the example that quite often gets used is, and it's not really a business example, but you could use GenAI to plan out a holiday and what the prices would be, and map out your schedule and all of that. But with agentic AI, you can actually have it book the holiday and negotiate the rates.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. I mean, you start having an agent who starts doing things for you as well, and importantly, can do those things autonomously, can make decisions and on what the course of action should be, and take that action. So I'm with you. I don't think this is very, very far away at all. But I will make 2 points about that. One that does worry me is that the technology discussion starts to outpace the risk discussion. And I don't know. There are, I mean, I was looking it up before. I mean, there was an article in our news the other day that KPMG is building agentic AI that's going to work for 24/7, 24 hours, 7 days a week, and it's going to sort of rewrite how things are done. Our banks over here are sort of talking about doing it. What are the risk discussions that are going on with that? But there's one other thing that I want to say, and this is particularly to internal communicators. While we're sitting here focusing on agentic AI, which is coming, and it will come pretty soon, I'm with you on that, Dan. There is something else that is here right now that we could be using, and it's really effective and really useful. And this is the mini agents that sit. So I'm talking about custom GPTs in ChatGPT, or in Gemini, or agents in Copilot. These are incredibly valuable tools that we can be using to sort of template different content, different comms activities, and create like little pieces of AI software. Really easy to do, that then everyone across the team could use. You were talking about, teams before, Dan, and I've built a bunch of these for myself, which I see as my team now. I'm complete with the team, and I think that's the way we should all be thinking.
Yeah.
And these tools here now.
Yeah, and isn't that the scary thing and the exciting thing? And that's what I talk about in the leadership book that I wrote, is that you're now going to have a series of superheroes on your team, right? Because everyone is going to have 5 interns that automate some of their processes, and they're going to become much more productive. So the question for leadership is, when that person's so much more productive, they become like a superhero. How do you manage a team of superheroes? Because that's very, very different, because how superstars work is different to others, right? And that's why I actually truly believe that the whole internal comms piece is much more important now. Holding the company together in this moment of high uncertainty, high frequency change, where people have got to be really engaged with what they do and love what they do. I mean, I talked about it in my TEDx talk. The future of work isn't what you think, it's not what you feel, it's what you love. Now we've got this world where it's not just what you love, it's what you're hyper productive about. And if you can't keep your best players on side through amazing internal comms, then the actual company is in deep trouble. And that's why I think with the strategically, but internal comms, whether it wants to or not, will always be foisted up to the C-suite, because it's going to be the thing. Company culture will be the difference between winning and losing, whether or not you're using AI, because I think everyone's going to use AI. Wayne, I absolutely loved your research. I also loved talking to you as well here today. How would people find you? Of course, you talked about LinkedIn. What's the name of the research if they're looking for it online? Because we've only got a couple of minutes left. So over to you to tell them where to find it.
It's called, the easiest way to look it up is it's called Comms 2030 or hashtag Comms 2030. I think you can actually type in hashtag Comms 2030 and find it. And it's a day in the life of a future communications professional. And so if you look that up, you should be able to come across it on LinkedIn. If you can't, look me up and just type in Wayne Aspland. There's not too many of us. Find me and I'll make sure you get a copy.
Fantastic. What I'll also do, Wayne, I'm also going to send out them to everyone who was signed up for today. I'm also going to mention it in my newsletter, which is going to go out. That's the Future of Work Friday, which is going to go out today as well. Just from me, just to kind of sign off, I'm going to do, Wayne, you've literally inspired me to do one of these every couple of weeks with someone who's a mover and shaker in the industry. And, I'm hoping maybe I've got some other people in mind. I won't give their names away, but I'd love for everyone who's on the call today to come to the next one, because that'll be in 2 weeks' time. That is to hold me to account to do it in 2 weeks' time, Wayne. Let's also do some work together. It was having you on the show has been brilliant. So huge thanks,
and
Wayne.
I've loved it too, and I hope everyone on the call got some value out of it.
I can absolutely promise you they do. And if well, definitely just go and download that research, because it really is brilliant. Everyone, have a lovely day. Wayne, thanks for giving up your evening too. And everyone, take care.
Absolute pleasure. See you all.